What's up, Jordan? How you feeling?
I'm good, Sam. What's up with you, man?
Man, chilling. Soaking in these sun rays out here in Los Angeles.
Too,
the Music Business Podcast Los Angeles tour continues. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Justin DeMarco. Justin helps lead marketing and is a product manager at Red Light Management. If you guys aren't familiar, Red Light Management is literally one of the most prolific management companies in the business.
I think it's the largest management company.
Yeah, they have massive roster, hundreds of artists. People like Dave Matthews Band, Fish, Duke Dumont, ODESZA, the
Alabama
Borgore.
Shakes.
Yeah, I mean the Lionel Richie, like all these different people. Justin's specific role is to help run an in-house marketing team that supports their different artists with content and digital efforts, mostly focused across their different electronic acts and dance music acts. So I think it's really interesting for a couple reasons. For starters, I think Justin obviously has tons of great perspectives on holistic marketing tactics and strategies for artists. Prior to working at Red Light, he was working at Wavo, which is another very big kind of marketing and ad agency for the music industry. So he's got a very good understanding on digital strategy. So we got to dive very deep into some specific tactics, growing audiences, creating content to help build your fan base versus content and tactics to help sell tickets or drive streams. The list goes on. I really enjoyed this. And also, too, I think what Red Light is doing by having an in-house content and marketing team that Justin's a big part of, to me is awesome. And I feel like that's the direction more and more management companies will be going, is really starting to staff and bring in full-time in-house marketing team and content teams rather than just having like sporadic engagements with different videographers or content creators or social managers here and there. We're really making this an integral component of what it means to sign with a management company. So really enjoyed hearing Justin's perspective. What do you think, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that's interesting about Justin is that he specializes in the dance sector. So a lot of the people that he facilitates marketing for are DJs, and we get into it in the episode a little bit, but DJs obviously are curators in themselves, and that's their primary job. So how do you make somebody the focus who inherently puts the focus on everybody else in their music? You know, how do you create and develop that brand? I thought that was super interesting. I also thought it was great that at some point, you know, we obviously know, in addition to the people that work in the industry that listen to this podcast, there are a lot of people that want to join it. And he talks about really making yourself unique in a situation in order to really bring value to a company. So I thought that was also great.
Yeah. All right. Well, without any further ado, Mr. Justin DeMarco. Justin, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Good. How you guys doing?
Fantastic.
Good.
Very excited to have you on the show. This is part of our LA tour, Music Business Podcast, but very esteemed guests. So I think you're currently working and have an incredibly, really unique and awesome role. I mean, kind of leading an in-house marketing team at one of the world's biggest management companies. Can you talk a little bit about your journey to that point? I know it's obviously not your first job in the music industry, so I'd love to hear just a little bit about your path before we start diving into a lot more kind of perspectives and tactics in marketing.
Yeah, so I started in music back in college. I started a music blog at the time. That eventually led me into management. I started working with some friends who were producers and making music. Started a management company with my partner, Michael, who's still a manager, actually. He manages Robotaki and a few others. From there, I eventually joined Wavo. And so that was kind of like my first sort of bigger role in the music industry. Wavo is a marketing technology company for music, kind of working at the intersection of tech and music. Built a lot of advertising products and eventually kind of transitioned to being a full-on agency. While I was there, I worked with companies like Atlantic Records, Interscope, Warner, and a couple years into my job, I was tasked with building up our live events division. So in that role, I worked with promoters, with festivals on, you know, helping them sell tickets to their shows and also helping artists sell tickets on their tours. And then in September, I joined Red Light Management, where I now oversee marketing for the electronic division. So that is essentially tour marketing, release strategy, digital advertising, pitching to DSPs. It's a very kind of wide-ranging role. And I'm there to essentially act as support for all of our managers on any marketing-related issues.
Awesome. So, for where are you from originally again? Montreal?
Montreal, Canada.
So, what is the scene like in Montreal?
Montreal is the cultural hub of Canada, in my opinion. I mean, people give a lot of credit to Toronto, and like,
I was about to say, you pretty much said Montreal is the fucking shit. It's the best. Montreal is great. You know, I think what makes Montreal special is, well, the French language. That's something that's super unique. In French?
I do. Yeah, I do speak French. So that gives Montreal kind of a unique perspective. But, there's a really healthy electronic music scene. There's a really healthy indie music scene. I think we have a ways to go when it comes to hip hop and like R&B. Toronto kind of stole the show there. But, as somebody who kind of grew up with electronic music and has always been a fan of electronic music, it was a great place to learn. We have so many incredible artists. A-Track is from there.
K-Tra,
so there's some really incredible talent from that city, and that's kind of where I learned the music business.
For sure. So I want to learn, Red Light is a powerhouse management company. It's the biggest management company in the world?
From what I understand, yeah.
Like artists,
just in terms of artists, I think we have 300 plus artists.
Yeah.
We have offices in 6-7 cities.
Yeah.
So definitely, there's a wide range of talent from like artists that are just beginning to, stadium acts.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting too is, just your role kind of being this almost in-house marketing lead across all of the electronic artists is, you don't necessarily, like smaller management teams don't have dedicated marketing teams or staff. It's kind of, the manager will have to wear a lot of hats or rely on other agency teams. Can you talk a little bit about how that team is structured internally at Red Light and how you support the different artists on the roster?
Yeah, so I'm part of what we call our creative services team. So that includes myself in the marketing role, but we also have some social media managers. We have some extremely talented graphic designers, photo, video people, motion graphics people. So we have this whole kind of unit within the company that can support our managers for any kind of creative or marketing endeavor. Whereas in other companies, that work generally has to be outsourced. And it becomes a lot more expensive, obviously, so you might take on some more work internally, but, you're a manager, so you do a million other things, and you're not able to maybe produce the level of work that you would need, or you have to pay, a ton of money to get it done externally.
Yeah.
So for us, I think it's been a real competitive advantage because we have that ability to like, create creative product really fast, be nimble, and, be in the room with our creatives not 24/7, but
sometimes 23/6.
5 days a week,
That's fun. That's exciting. I think, and just out of curiosity too, is that structured like a, label marketing team where it can oftentimes the services and resources are monopolized by a lot of the highest like priority artists? I'm just curious as to, are there artists that are vying for those resources? Are you ever like billing it back to the artists, or that is just if they sign with Red Light, they get access to this team?
Yeah, if they sign with Red Light, they get access to this team.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really prioritize any artists over any other.
That's
all
awesome.
Our managers use us, for whatever kind of needs they have on their projects. And I think it's fantastic. It's like these smaller artists that wouldn't have the focus or the attention other companies have those resources.
It's interesting that you asked that though, because, where I work, it's sometimes the bigger artists actually need less attention because they're already established.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we had a client who was one of the biggest producers in the world. And at the time we had another client, GoldLink, who was slowly building his career. He was at a place where he really needed the attention from everybody on the team, as opposed to this producer who already had this pedigree. You know what I mean? So I just think it's interesting that you asked that question, because sometimes the smaller artists can get more attention just by the nature, and then the bigger artists just need their one or two managers that have kind of been riding for them because they have a system down, and sometimes that system takes more of an effort than building it for somebody who already has it down packed.
Totally,
especially in management. So
for sure,
yeah, and it's actually very similar with us. To a certain extent, the bigger artists will have the resources. If they want like a creative director that works on their team, they'll have the resources to pay that person. Or if they have, a label with a label deal, they'll have all of those services available. We're definitely there to support as well. But when it comes to smaller artists that don't necessarily have that ability to take it, out of house, we're able to provide those services to them as well.
That's awesome.
Super cool. So, I mean, marketing is such a broad topic with so many different angles, but what do you feel are some of the most important areas of focus when an artist is going to consider marketing, growing their fan base, building their career?
To me, the biggest area of focus, I think, is positioning and strategy. Like, how do you differentiate yourself in the marketplace? I think so many artists are focused on just getting their music to as many people as possible that they don't think about who those people are and how those people are going to relate to their music. We've seen so many artists that have millions and millions of streams on Spotify, but can't sell 200 tickets. And artists that don't have a lot of streams and that can fill in, a 2,000 cap room. So I think it really comes down to how you differentiate yourself, how you build a connection with your fans, and how you're going to organize all your marketing efforts around sort of delivering something special for that fan the way that you've decided that you're going to deliver that product.
How do you identify what that is when an artist comes on to Red Light? Or I guess this could just be the way that you do it as a marketer yourself. So for people that want to look back at their own, socials or marketing tactics, what's some of the first steps that they should do to identify how they should position and strategize?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing that you have to do is really, figure out what your sound is, figure out where you come from as an artist, what, who do you connect to already? And look at ways of kind of integrating that into what you're doing. I think a lot of it comes with experimentation as well. When you're starting out, you can't have these grand ideas about like, this is the 10-year plan and this is how I'm going to get there. You put out a lot of music, you work with all kinds of people, and you figure out what kind of works, what connects, what people are interested in when it comes to your craft. It's not a science. I think a lot of it, comes with testing, with, you have a hypothesis. Is this going to work? You maybe put out a release or a music video that has a certain vibe to it. And you see if people connect with it, and maybe they don't, and you try something else. So I think it's an iterative process, but it's going to be different for every artist.
Right. When you think about, kind of when it boils down to, I guess we'll talk about kind of start to get a little more specific of like tactics as they pertain to like subsets or specific priorities when you're marketing. So oftentimes it's like, I guess I'd kind of break it into like three overarching areas. You have like build a fan base online, or just build a fan base in general, online obviously too. Sell tickets, drive streams. So I'd like to kind of dive into each one of those and get your take and perspective. So we'll start with just given I guess your experience I'd say foundation is building the fan base. So let's start there. What are specific tactics? Once you've kind of thought a little bit about the digital strategy, how you want to differentiate yourself, how do you really think about growing a fan base? And what are specific tactics that you've seen work well when it comes to really building a lot of momentum in building a fan base?
I think one thing that's important is, treating your fans as if they're special. We have some artists that are really good about interacting with their fans, about, communicating with them on private WhatsApp groups, on Facebook groups, where they're super involved. And they like the stuff that the fans post. They post in those groups themselves. Like they care about their fans as if they were their family. And I think you've seen a lot of success in recent years with artists that have kind of embraced that strategy. Especially in dance music. If you look at artists like Above and Beyond, if you look at artists like Rez, for us, we have Bass Nectar, LS Dream, who've really kind of embraced that fan first approach. They'll meet up with their fans before shows, they'll hang out, grab a pizza, Like just talk with them, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it starts with that like one-on-one communication, because once you do that, like you build a fan for life.
Right.
And that person is then going to become an ambassador for your music and help grow, you know, your fan base that way.
Right. For sure. When you think about helping artists with content, how do you think about content that can help an artist grow their fan base versus content that's going to help them promote a specific initiative?
It's a good question. Content that can grow their fan base. You know, I don't think there's one specific piece of content that will grow your fan base. It's not like you put out one Instagram, you know, post or like one YouTube video and suddenly like your fan base is
I'm doing this for my fan base.
But I think, you know, it comes down to sort of being consistent. And if somebody does discover you, do you have that kind of that depth of content that, you know, they can go in and go down the rabbit hole and figure out, you know, what is this artist all about? What is their world, you know? And I think the idea is you want to bring people into that world. And that extends to your live show. It extends to your music videos. It extends to the way that you interact with people on social media, to your merch, you know?
Right.
The artists that have the most sort of specific and well thought out kind of brand vision are able to bring those elements into play across everything that they do. So you look at like the Odd Future crew, they have their festivals, they have like the way that their merch is designed, you know, they have ambassadors and all the artists that work with them. It kind of extends to everything that they do.
Right.
And I think that's where you see longevity and success in the music industry. They've been around for 10 years and like they're still on top of the game. And I think in 10 years, they'll still be there, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess going into the next bucket of priorities, if you will, driving streams. I know this is once again loaded and broad, but how do you think about driving streams from an organic? Let's start with organic perspective, where it's not running ads.
Yeah. I mean, you know, obviously playlists are great to drive streams. You land on a huge playlist, and that'll help immensely.
And then when it comes to playlists, it's nice. You probably have some solid playlist connections, more so than the average manager or fan would have, just given the artists you work with in a red light too. Are there tips or tactics that artists and younger and smaller managers can think about when it comes to getting on playlists, even if they don't have like the plug at Spotify? Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's about building a story. You know, they're looking for artists that have momentum and they want to amplify that story. So if you have momentum at press, if you have momentum at radio, if you have something that's happening on the touring side, if they see that, you know, you're building content to kind of go back to this idea of like building a universe around your music, if you're building content, if you're putting out music videos, you know, this is a serious artist that has something to say, that has a point of view, that has a message. They're going to see that. And, you know, there's obviously tools like the Spotify for Artists tools. And, you know, you can find information about who the playlist editors are. And, you know, just be smart about how you approach them. It's not just about blasting anybody.
DM.
Like there's a certain way of doing things, you know, So I think, you know, it's about sort of being able to explain what you stand for and why, you know, there's a reason for people to care about your music.
Right. Why you're relevant to them. They want people to listen to their playlists because they want people to enjoy the music on their playlists.
For sure.
You know, past the music, why should they be on their playlists? Why should we give you this platform? How will it help us also?
Totally.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not telling the editors, like, for this small baby band that I'm working with, you know, this would be great on New Music Friday. Like, you know, you have to build a story. Like, you have to build a story. There's you know, real. There's the genre playlist. There's the Friday crate diggers of the world. Like, you kind of, you know, slowly build it up. And that is what's going to give you momentum to kind of go into those bigger playlists over time.
Right. To continue pressing into other tactics to drive streams, what do you think is Presaves worth it? Like, do you think it's valuable to? I think obviously you want to build some level of anticipation, whether or not you're driving pre-saves or not. Teasing songs, like there's songs. I remember Rich the Kid when he'd literally been teasing the song "New Freezer" for like a year and a half before the song came out. I remember seeing like snippets and stuff, and I mean that is amazing because then come launch day you have all this anticipation. Pre-save specifically, is that something artists should be driving towards?
I'm a fan of Presaves. I don't know how much they move the needle in terms of streams, but it's almost, somebody is like committing to kind of listening to that song later on. It's a great way to build up your email list. A lot of the pre-save tools have kind of functionalities where a fan can go in and agree to give their email to the artist. So that's a way for the artist to keep that connection going.
Do you know any of those specific tools off the top of your head?
I like to use Linkfire a lot. That's just the one that I have like the most experience with, but there's a ton out there. There's FFM, there's Foundy. I don't know if all of these have the pre-save functionality into them. A lot of them kind of are integrated with like the landing pages where, it'll send you to all the different streaming services and so on.
Yeah,
but
smart URL.
Yeah.
Smart URL. Yeah, exactly.
What about the followers feature? I feel like, in my experience, when I see followers on some of my clients, it's sort of just like a passive thing. It's like, okay, great. They have 100,000 followers now on Spotify. Is that something that's in how you market your clients? Is that something that you actually take into account? How do we increase Spotify followers themselves,
Yeah, absolutely. Spotify follows are extremely important because if somebody follows you and you put out a song, it'll go into the release radar playlist. And consistently for every single one of our artists, that is like the number one driver of streams. So it's really, really important to try and encourage your fans to follow you. We've run a lot of like follow campaigns, like, I don't know, if we're running campaign, try to sell tickets to a tour. It's like, okay, you can win 2 tickets to this show, but you have to follow the artist on Spotify.
So you can search who follows on Spotify?
No, but what the tools that you use for that campaign, they'll then give you, the people who followed you as part of that campaign.
Right.
And then, you pick a winner.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you work specifically in dance.
Specifically in dance, yeah.
So what do you think in terms of marketing is exclusive or something that you've realized as you've been working in this genre is specific to dance in terms of market trends, how you approach it? Obviously, the stuff that we've been going to now are kind of general. You can kind of, get into everything that we've said so far with most genres. What is the world like, I guess, and how does that interpret the way that you market it?
Yeah,
how's that different than when you would be like, I can't do hip hop like this, or I can't do pop like this.
Yeah, for sure. Dance music's interesting because it's very DJ driven, so you're not just playing your own music, you're playing music by other artists.
Right.
And what that does is that you're not the only one who's pushing your music out there. If you're a DJ and I send you my track and you have a platform and you're playing this track in your sets, you're promoting my music as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the unique feature about dance music is that it's DJ driven, it's club driven. The DJ mixes are still a big thing.
Right.
People who follow dance music obviously follow the artists that they like, but they also follow curators who have good taste.
Yeah.
And so if you can get involved with a curator who has good taste, that's like a stamp of approval for you. That's going to sort of elevate you in your career.
Right.
So I think that's the biggest thing in dance music that I see is like, as a producer, you don't want to just sort of market to fans, but you also want other DJs to like your music and respect what you do.
Right. Because you can't be playing whack shit, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. How does that change the general branding of DJs? So when I think of artists, the clients that I work with, they are very focused on their music. How does that change, the way you experiment on socials? How does that change the way that you interact with your fans? Is it more so, do you DJ on Instagram? You know what I mean? Like, do you show new songs that you like on Instagram also as a part of your brand? How does that change it if the DJ, what they do isn't all about them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on the artist. Some, dance music has kind of come from DJ culture, and transitioned now to a mix of producer and DJ culture. So, depending on the artist, you might sit more on one side of that spectrum. Some artists, have their own mix shows that they play. They'll play every week, and they'll play music from all kinds of artists.
Right.
They'll post their sets to be downloaded. a 5-hour set on SoundCloud. You know, that's something that their fans are excited about. For other artists, it's more kind of a traditional artist mentality where they go through the album cycle and the tour, and you know, they're not as curator focused. Right. So I think it really comes down to the artist knowing where they fit on that spectrum, and you know, if they are kind of that curator type, getting their DJ skills to the forefront is something that we're definitely gonna promote and try and emphasize in the way that we market. Yeah.
Right. Awesome. You can go to I kind of distracted. You can go to the third tier of marketing. Yeah.
Before we even do that, back to the second tier.
The second tier.
I mean, obviously, driving streams, rolling out songs is critical. Paid. We'll just dive into paid.
Paid.
Are you paid?
No. Paid
you got money?
I mean, I just have like so many fucking questions. I'm like, okay. Paid media. You have influencers. You have influencers on Instagram, TikTok. You have native Facebook ads where you can run ads across Facebook and Instagram, story ads. You can pay to playlist, and like sometimes that can even be sketchy and bite you in the ass. When you think about deploying a paid media budget towards driving streams and amplifying a new music release, what have you found to be the most effective ways of allocating that budget?
So the first thing I think to know is that the big challenge with paid media when it comes to streaming is that you don't really know what happens once you send somebody off to a link.
It's horrible.
It's
a marketer's worst nightmare.
Exactly. Yeah. There's no attribution.
The funnel is leaky.
Yeah, exactly. So like, what happens once they go to Spotify?
What they do?
Yeah. You have no idea.
And even in my own experience, I'll get served an ad for a song and swipe up, and then it like takes me to. It won't even take me to my Spotify app. It'll take me to like Spotify in my browser where I'm not logged in. It's like this is just not working at all.
Yeah. So I think that part of paid media is kind of broken. But knowing that, you know, you can kind of adapt and see your paid media as a way to build brand awareness, as a way to build familiarity with that artist. Mm-hmm. Especially if you have the right kind of tracking tools in place so that you're consistently re-engaging the same audience, they will become more familiar with their music. So the idea is that when they go on Spotify or Apple Music, and they see your name pop up on a playlist, they might not skip it. They're going to listen to that song. Right. Or they're going to go search, you know, for your track afterwards. If you think that you're going to, you know, run some Facebook ads and it's going to drive up your stream count, like in direct proportion to how much you spend,
right?
You know, that's that's not going to work for you.
Yeah, for sure.
But you know, I think there's still a place for paid media in terms of building awareness with an artist, in terms of building familiarity. Mm-hmm. You know, if you have a really strong visual asset, like so much of advertising now is visual. So if you have a strong visual identity and you can put that to the forefront and kind of amplify the reach that, you know, you would not be getting if you were only posting it sort of organically,
right?
There's a place for paid media in that. So, sure. You know, the way that I see it is, it's a brand awareness thing, but it's also a way to get the visual aspect and build your brand identity
totally.
On those platforms. You know, Instagram Stories takes up the full screen on your phone, so it's like that's a huge opportunity to get in someone's face. Right. And, you know, get them to see what you're all about and catch their attention. It's not every single person that's going to be interested, but that's how you kind of start the conversation with, you know, those new fans. And then with the fans that you already have, if you're able to continually re-engage them, that's going to hopefully build up that fandom, you know, over time, where somebody might have only heard of you one time, but, you know, you engage them over multiple campaigns, they get more interested. Eventually they'll buy a ticket to your show, and you kind of grow it that way.
For sure. So if you have a $5,000 or $10,000 budget, how are you breaking it down?
It depends who the artist is.
Did you say 5 or 10?
I switched to 10.
Okay.
He works at Red Light, bro. He's playing around.
Let's say you got $1 million budget.
Yeah, you got $1 million budget. 10,000. I mean, it depends. Do you have a music video?
Yeah.
You have a music video. I'm probably putting half of my budget onto YouTube to promote the shit out of that music video. TrueView ads, I think, are a great tool to get your music videos in front of people and get them seen. It's a visual, to get back to the visual aspect, totally. Like it's a visual piece of content that's just really rich and a great way to get your brand across to fans. So I'm probably putting half my budget into TrueView ads to promote the music video. A good chunk of it into Instagram stories. I think, again, it comes down to the visual aspect. You're taking up the whole phone, as opposed to something that's in someone's feed that they're just trying to scroll past.
Or something around what they're trying to do.
Yeah, no,
like
exactly.
Banner ads or something like that. They do work, but those Instagram story ads piss me off. That's how I know they work well.
Yeah. Or the targeting's not good.
Or the targeting's not good. I have downloaded a bunch of shit off those stories too. Yeah. So
but beyond just the budget allocation, I think it comes down to the content that you're using. For sure. Something that we found that's very successful is when artists directly kind of shout out to the fans, like, hey, this is my new song, super excited to share this with you. Right. What do you think? Check it out on Spotify, check it out on Apple Music, whatever the case might be. But that's, a way for artists to kind of bring their personality into the conversation and connect with fans more than just like a piece of artwork that has a song playing in the background.
For sure.
So that's been really successful for us. I think, trying to focus on creating engaging content is half the battle when it comes to paid media and just, digital marketing in general.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that we've seen work well when it comes to like creating content too is like people, even people don't like to feel like they're being marketed to. So we try and make, if we're running an ad around a song, try and make it feel as organic as possible. And in simple and even simpler terms, it's like, take a live performance clip. This is something that if the artist were to post live on their page, it would perform well organically. Or if it's a DJ, then playing out the song. That can be better, even though that it can just be an iPhone video of them playing it live with a cool crowd reaction, which can outperform by far a $2,000 super polished animated motion graphic of the artwork, just because it feels more produced. And in general too, it's like if things feel overproduced, it once again makes people feel like they're being marketed to and likely won't perform as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that time and time again. Like a cell phone video of, a huge moment at a show outperform the minute-long, like, crazy trailer that they spent a ton of money on.
Right.
And, it just makes me wonder, like, why are we spending all this money when, people are looking for something authentic, and that kind of crowd view of the show is more in line with what the fans can experience when they're there than, the drone shot like on top of the crowd,
Yeah, true.
For sure. True. All right. Third pillar.
Go ahead.
Third pillar.
Live. I'm trying to sell out my show. Not sell out myself, but the show.
I'm not a sellout.
Yeah. If you want to Jordan's selling out. So you're trying to sell a bunch of tickets to an upcoming show. So you're a mid artist. It's a hard ticket show. 3K cap room. Biggest room you've ever done. New York City or LA, major market. You have some level of traction. What are you thinking as far as from a marketing perspective? You don't want to just rely on the promoter. So as an artist and as kind of being on the management side, you want to take it a little bit upon yourself to make sure this show sells out, because if this one sells out, it's a good signal to other promoters. It's a good signal that if you sold out X venue in New York City, damn, you should get booked in all these other markets. How are you approaching that?
For sure. So obviously there's a ton of stuff that you can do. I think it really starts with, the data that you have on your fans and really knowing who your core fans are. And I think that comes back to what we were talking about a bit earlier with regards to marketing releases. If you're able to track the fans that are interested in your music, those are the people who are most likely to go to your show.
Right.
So if you have been doing a good job at, tracking your audiences, building up your email list, consistently re-engaging fans with your music, when the time comes to announce a show, you're not sort of trying to reach out there and, imagine who might be interested in this show. Like you have that audience built out already.
Right.
So I think that, is really the first sort of pillar that you want to be focusing on. is consistently re-engaging your audience, making sure that you have the right tools to track them, getting back to content, like having great content as a driver to get fans to experience what that show is going to be like. You know, shots from the crowd, not like the crazy edited $10,000 video.
Right.
After that, I think, you know, there's a lot of pre-sale tools that are really powerful. You know, you can do a Spotify pre-sale where Spotify will send out an email to all your top fans with a special code that will give them access to tickets before.
They have to agree to that, right? You have
the
to, like,
fans.
Do you have to like pitch Spotify on
You have
that?
to pitch, you have to pitch Spotify. You have to make sure, you know, it's a certain number of weeks before you're going on sale.
Right, right.
You can't just hit them up the day before.
I need help.
Yeah, no, exactly.
This is an important show for me.
No, exactly. You know, Spotify presale is great. Songkick has a presale feature as well. I think Bands in Town might have one. I haven't used it as much, but you know, these are all tools that people who are interested in live music use. And so if you're able to connect with those people before your tickets are actually going on sale, that's going to give you a leg up for sure.
Yeah.
After that, you know, it comes down to content. It comes down to like having a really solid advertising plan in place. I'm seeing, you know, a lot of marketing budgets are really spent on advertising nowadays.
Yeah.
There's so many shows going on. There's so much, you know, so many things happening all the time. Fans need to know about it, and they need to kind of consistently be reminded of it. So, you know, there's all kinds of tools and tactics that you can use to, you know, make sure that you're allocating your budgets correctly, that you're retargeting people who might be interested but didn't purchase a ticket. You know, that is kind of going a bit too much into the weeds maybe for this conversation. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the gist of it. You know,
totally.
I think, yeah.
One random, just little thing too is, and I'm sure we could dive way deeper into all the weeds, but one little thing that people don't even think about too is like Facebook events. If you're an event admin in a Facebook event and you post, everybody that is marked interested or going to that event gets a notification.
I do that every time.
That you posted, so that's a great way to like, if people are interested, to re-engage and help actually get them across the line of buying a ticket.
And you can schedule those posts now too. So I used to have to wake up.
Posts within Facebook events?
Yes. So I used to have to wake up.
What tool are you using for that?
It's just Facebook. You can just schedule within Facebook. When you type a comment, you can schedule when it goes up. And I think I think they realized that people were doing that. When stuff would go up at, you know, 10 a.m. London time, and I would have to make sure there was a post at 5 a.m. New York time. You know what I mean? Now you can schedule it. They make it a lot easier.
Nice.
Something that I also think has worked on my end, at least, is email marketing for stuff like that.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah.
So, you know, if you have a show saying we have a limited amount of pre-sale tickets, sign up for my mailing list. I'll send you the pre-sale ticket at this certain time, at this certain day. Send another email out that same day, either at the exact time that the pre-sale goes out or an hour before. You're like, hey, the pre-sale is happening or the pre-sale is live now. That to me has, and then you market it to the segment that signed up.
For sure.
Exactly. You market, and then obviously when the tickets are on sale, you send it to everybody. But it's so you don't send everybody like 3 emails if they're already on the list.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a great way to build up your list as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's been something that we've used for you know a while here. That if you have the engagement on everything else and that's just a part of the picture, then people will sign up to get the pre-sale because they don't feel like they're being marketed to. It just feels like something else, like Instagram or Facebook, where they just have to sign up in order to get your messaging and have to trust your messaging in order to do that too.
Yeah,
totally.
You know?
And I think it also comes down to not just relying on the promoter to do all the work.
For sure.
You know, you have to
Sam's
be.
ears. He's like, tell him. Tell him.
No, I mean,
it relies on hiring Knox. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, promoters are promoting dozens and dozens of shows at the same time, you know, and so you're just one of their shows.
Right.
And, you know, you really want to make sure that like they're doing everything they can to promote that show effectively. And so if you stay on top of them, if you're, you know, paying attention to those shows, they're going to be paying more attention to it as well.
Right.
And so, you know, I think that's something that's really important is like, you have to take ownership of that show selling out, not just leave it to the promoter.
For sure.
And if it doesn't work out, it's the promoter's fault.
Totally.
Right. And you can't just get on the promoter's ass about it because a lot of the times they don't actually know how to get the result that you want. You know what I mean?
It's team effort.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Totally.
So
one other tactic too is I think a lot of people overlook the fact that you're reaching such a small subset of your followers when you post organically that you can build custom audiences of people that follow you and live in certain markets and almost guarantee that your fans in those markets know you have a show. That's the hands down the most likely audience to buy your tickets. And there's still a good chance they don't even know you're coming. So I think even if you don't have a massive budget, even if you are a smaller artist, I mean, being able to target those fans, and even if you're a bigger artist, like it's going to be one of the smaller audiences you can target, but it's going to be one of the most relevant ones too. So you should be doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm running some ads for an artist right now who's on tour in Europe, and I'm trying to spend $200 over the course of like a few weeks, and the frequency on some of these audiences is like 7 or 8, and I'm like, damn, okay, I only needed like $100 and I can reach every fan in London. So it's like you don't need a lot of money to go far if you have your audiences organized in the right way. Those are the people who are going to be buying tickets, and so. You don't need huge budgets to make a difference. Yeah, for sure. It's a random idea, but might as well throw it out here. I feel like there's artists that can make more money by almost disintermediating promoters and throwing their own shows. I think you see this happen at the biggest level when you see people like Drake or, this is a completely different league, but think about somebody like Floyd Mayweather in boxing. He's gotten so big to the point that he created his own promotion company, right? Like he doesn't need to get booked to box. He's doing the bookings. Whoever he fights, he's paying them. Like I think artists, like a Drake or somebody, they're essentially paying a venue fee for the venue and helping sell tickets to the venue rather than necessarily getting booked at times. So do you feel like I feel like smaller artists, if they have a strong connection with their fan base, you don't need to be at this major caliber. Do you guys feel like artists can, to some extent, broker more deals with venues directly and disintermediate local promoters? Damn, that's a good question. I think the challenge, with somebody like Floyd Mayweather, all he needs to do is like go to Vegas and do one fight, and that's his paycheck for the year. For sure. When you're an artist, you want to be playing in as many different cities as possible. Right.
I'm not saying every single show, but I think for like certain shows, you see there's some DJs that will have their own parties, but
for sure. I think you're seeing more and more artists that are throwing their own festivals, throwing their own, party brands, but they're still doing it in collaboration with local promoters who have that local expertise, who have the customer lists of people who are going to come to the show. Promoting a show is really, really hard, and hats off to all the promoters who are doing it because it's not an easy job. And I think if artists take that onto themselves as like another responsibility, maybe some artists might be willing to do it, but I can't see that becoming like a huge trend anytime soon.
I also think that if the career for the artist is going upwards, then you'll be doing different venues the next time you go to a show, which also changes the amount of expertise you need to sell out that show. Or you'll be doing you'll be in a different environment, I guess. So like promoting to me always kind of seemed like, in terms of what they're doing, kind of like trying to hit a moving target, because you could come to a city the next year and your entire fan base is different, and you have to depend on that local expertise to kind of figure it out, especially the first time that you're in these markets. Right. By the time that you can get rid of a promoter, you'd have to play at the same venue, have the same sort of fan base, to be at the same point of your career every time you play that venue. And then maybe the third or fourth time, you're like, all right, I can get this. I can do this myself.
Totally.
But there's so many different variables that we don't think about.
For sure.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's your fourth show in the market. That promoter has, the ticket buyers for your 4 previous shows. You have nothing. Your Facebook fans,
Right, for sure. Yeah. Which is like another just high level issue in the music industry.
I think, as you become bigger as an artist, as you build up your own brand, you're definitely in a position to negotiate better deals. You're in a position to like launch your own festival. We've seen Porter Robinson do it. Odd Future has their own festival. Post Malone has his own festival.
Astro World.
Like it's Dreamville. Just it's going on and on and on. And so artists are becoming platforms to curate their tastes and to bring in other artists that they respect and want to introduce to fans. So I think that's a trend that we're going to continue seeing, but I don't see artists sort of taking over the promoter role.
Yeah. So I want to segue into another topic. I know we kind of spoke a little bit about before the show, but this notion of audience management. I mean, we spoke about it. I mean, when you define audience management, I think we just alluded to the fact that like promoters own all of the customer data, right? That's kind of a problem. Like artists should have some level of like ownership and direct contact with their audience. How do you think when you say audience management, what does that mean? Why is it important? What can people think about when they want to better manage their audience?
Yeah, I mean, what audience management comes down to is like the relationship with the fan. Promoters are the ones who are selling tickets, and so they get the email information, they get the credit card information. They're the ones who have that contact information. But ultimately, it's the artist that's filling up the room. Mm-hmm. So they have no idea who's in the room when they're playing a show. They just get a paycheck at the end of the night. And if they want to go play that city again, they have to go back to that promoter because that promoter has all the data on who their fans are. Mm-hmm. It's a problem for artists because they can't remarket to that fan afterwards. So if you came to my show and I'm like, I want to introduce you to my album, I want to sell merch to you, I can't do that because I don't know who you are.
Right.
Labels also hold a lot of information on fans. They get some data back from the DSPs, but they also hold information from all the marketing that they're doing. And, some labels are great. They'll share that information with artists, but ultimately the artist is not the one who owns that data. Mm-hmm. But it's the artist who's building that relationship with fans. So I think, it's not something that's like a huge topic in the industry just because it's kind of a niche area of digital marketing. But I think it's really important for artists to have that direct connection with their fans so that they can build that long-term relationship. If they're trying to market to new people every time they have a new release or every time they have a show, they're starting from scratch. So my view is that, management companies and booking agencies need to do a better job of, pushing their partners in the music industry to give up a bit of that fan data or at least share it, because we are partners in this endeavor of, building fan relationships.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So because these are bigger companies, they often, are able to sort of deny these requests for artists. But I think, more and more management companies, more and more artists are becoming aware that it is important for them to own that relationship.
For sure.
That's why email marketing is so huge. I think that's why email is, you own that email.
Right.
You can hit up that fan via email on anytime you want,
Totally.
I think you're seeing texting also kind of resurge right now because of that. Mm-hmm. It's a direct sort of way to communicate with your fans. And so there's platforms like Community that allow that. So yeah, to me, that's a really important topic. I think the artists that have the best relationship with their fans, that have the best fan data, are going to have more longevity because they're not as reliant on sort of third-party partners to market for them. They can do it themselves.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, I love that. No, I think it's to the extent, I know Ryan Leslie, major proponent of this philosophy too, being able to like truly own your data, own the connection with your fans. I think, even sometimes you're seeing artists when they're doing those pre-sale pages, just making it a priority. And I think from day one, if you're able to better own that connection, for sure, it's like, I think they speak about like owning the racetrack sometimes when you're, the fact that you can't reach your followers organically. Being able to have that connection, being able to take that email list, upload it to Facebook, run it as a custom audience, like all that stuff is it's crazy.
Yeah, and beyond just email and texting, like there are tools that are available for anybody to use. Facebook Pixels are a great tool to put on your website, so that you can remarket to anybody who visit your website, or to put on your merch page, so that who's buying a t-shirt from you. To put on your link fire when you have a new release, so that you can continually re-engage those people via Facebook. And same thing for Google.
Yeah. Super like marketing nerd tool, but there's a tool called Pixel Me, where you can actually, for sites like Amazon or even like Ticketmaster sometimes. Ticketmaster, I think if you have like an enterprise account, you can put a Facebook pixel on a Ticketmaster site, but most artists can't actually edit their Ticketmaster page, or there's a lot of different times when you're driving traffic to a page that you don't own that you can't put a pixel on.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what Pixel Me does essentially is it's like a bit.ly or a link shortener where it will essentially you get a short link and it'll redirect somebody, but you can actually upload a pixel to your PixelMe link so that as it's redirecting them to the page, it's tagging them with the pixel.
Yeah, that's what I do on a lot of my campaigns. I'm running ads for a show in Chicago, and I'm going to run that ticket link through a link fire that has a pixel. Mm-hmm. So, if I'm spending $250, I'm sending, 1,000 people to the ticket page. I know who those people are.
Right.
And the next time that I have a release, I can market to those people because, they were interested enough to click on a link to check out a show.
Right.
They might be interested in my new song and, my new album.
Huge.
Yeah.
Audience insights, obviously it's like critical to know your audience, whether it's doing this in a one-to-one way and literally just having conversations. I think we've spoken and you mentioned one artist that'll literally like stay to the very end with all of it after a show to really make sure he's nurturing those relationships. And that's good learning. It's in like startup world, they call it customer development.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you look at that, what are other ways that you can really understand your audience? I mean, I know there's like audience insights and sometimes basic demographic data can be helpful, but like, is me knowing that my average fan is 27 years old and lives in New York, maybe that'll help me like route my tour differently, which is valuable. But how do you think about developing a better understanding of your audience and using that to inform your marketing strategies?
It's a good question. There's tons of tools out there. Chartmetric has a really interesting tool where they have like brand affinity and like artist affinity with regards to the artist that you're looking at. Spotify related artists is, really important. You can find what your artist fans are listening to as well. So that might be an opportunity for a remix or a collab or a feature, or it might, just might give you some insight into what you thought your fans were into something, but turns out they're into something else. And that's like real data that's there to tell you. Instagram insights as well, Facebook insights. I think it's sort of a confluence of tools that you can use to give you a better picture of what your fan is like. I think the demographic data is maybe not as important. I mean, obviously you want to know if your fans are like 18 or 35. Like that's a huge difference in how you're going to kind of market and approach your strategy. But ultimately, I think it comes to what your fans are interested in, what they are as people, just what their vibe is. It's like you have to be able to relate to them on kind of a personal level, and you have to understand what the typical fan is like. How do they approach life? What do they wear? What music do they listen to? What do they do on their free time? So, yeah.
Totally. That was just your turn.
Yeah. What is something that you think people that have just started their careers don't pay enough attention to in terms of marketing their music, shows, the three pillars that we just talked about? Mm-hmm. What's like the number one piece of advice you would give somebody who's recently started their career or is a manager who just recently started managing,
Beyond marketing, just like career advice, I think I would encourage people to show initiative, to like look for problems. The music industry is so chaotic. There's so much stuff going on constantly. If you're able to take work off somebody else's plate because you've identified that like this is a problem and I'm going to solve it, you're really going to differentiate yourself compared to somebody who's just waiting for instructions on what to do next. I think you have to look at where there are opportunities, where there are problems, and bring solutions to the table. It's just a chaotic industry with so much going on all the time that you can't just rely on other people telling you what to do. So I think that's the biggest piece of advice I would have for somebody who's starting out. It's everybody has too much work going on. You guys probably have too much work going on. I have too much work going on. Yeah. It's like, so if there's somebody who's interning and is like, hey, I noticed that like, this thing is a huge issue for you. Like I put together this spreadsheet. I don't know. It's a solution to your problem. I'm like, okay, this guy's amazing. This girl's amazing. Like I need to hire them.
Right.
So I think, showing initiative, being resourceful, looking for problems and finding solutions is a way that you're going to differentiate yourself from somebody else who's just starting out and maybe is not showing those same character traits.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, even me in what I do right now, being at the company that I was at, I like made sure that, you know, what the lane that I was going in was a lane that wasn't already filled or that was done poorly. You know, something that like wasn't done well. You know, really taking a step back. What is the next like thing in marketing that you want people to pay attention to, or that you're paying attention to yourself?
Good question. I think personalization is probably something that is starting to get a bit of traction, but I think is going to be a lot bigger. There was a story last year about something that AEG did at one of their festivals where they like figured out who the biggest fans for that artist were. And during the show, they like texted those fans and were like, hey, you know, we're going to bring you backstage to meet this artist after the show.
Oh, shit.
And I thought that was like really, really cool. So I think, you know, things like that, where you can create these really special experiences that, you know, really mean the world to a fan, are going to become more and more prominent as people like better manage their data, as they get to understand, you know, who really cares about that artist. We're going to see more and more of that. I think that's something I'm excited about. And I would like to be able to do that myself and not just rely on AEG to do it, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, real, who have been some of your favorite artists to work with, or what have been some of your favorite like success stories or case studies when it comes to like working with cool artists?
I think in my previous job at Wavo,
now's your chance to name drop.
Yeah. My previous job I worked a lot with Above and Beyond's team.
Cool.
I think, you know, they just run a fantastic company. You know, they have fantastic labels. They really have a strong brand vision and vision for how they're developing their artist fan base and really kind of nurturing that fan base. Really smart marketers. You know, they've run a number of their own festivals and like large scale events all across the world. They have their own mix series. You know, they're always at the forefront of like new marketing strategies. So if I look to a company that's, you know, really doing it well in dance music, I definitely put them up there. I think Defected Records and their kind of family of labels is also a company that's really done a fantastic job in terms of marketing. It's, you know, something similar. It's, you know, it's being able to extend your brand beyond just music into live events, into merch. Defected is a house music label based out of the UK, but they have like a bunch of sub labels. They have a festival in Croatia. They have, you know, their night in Ibiza. So they've really kind of transformed themselves beyond just a record label, but into, you know, a media company that's across all these verticals. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. You know, that's what we're already seeing with artists who are building their own festivals. They're becoming media companies. And so, you know, if you're able to do that well, I think you're on the right track for sure.
That's exciting.
Awesome.
Cool, man. Well, we covered a lot of ground, had a lot of fun. Feel motivated to go market.
Yeah.
Go remarket.
We definitely covered a lot everywhere.
Build some audiences.
I'm excited to build some audiences.
Yeah.
I'm excited to find my fan base.
No, I mean, this is the foundation though, man. I think it's like you have quality product and you have getting it out there. If you're really to abstract on what's going to build a career, it's those two things.
Yeah.
So I think we were able to really dive into a lot of awesome tactics, man. So thank you so much for the time, the wisdom, and really excited to see what's up next in your future, man. Looks bright.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. This was great.
Cheers. Wow, I really enjoyed learning from Justin. I think it's awesome, the breadth of knowledge and experience he has. Having worked with so many different artists and marketing teams and festivals, I think really enables him to kind of be a Swiss Army knife from a marketing perspective. And really, we're glad we were able to take a very tactical approach as well today. What do you think?
Yeah, and I'm glad we got into his roots in Montreal too. I think that's relevant to his experience in the dance sector, and we don't really get to talk about different countries and different cultures that much, but I'm glad we kind of, glossed over that. I think the way Justin broke down everything was very methodical and logical in a way that people will be able to pick it up and really apply it to what they're doing immediately. So yeah, definitely super, super glad to get him on.
Well, thank you guys as always for tuning in. We greatly appreciate your support. Shoot us a message on Instagram. Let us know who you want to hear more of, what you're enjoying. We're here for you. So thank you guys for your support. We'll see you next week.